I'm Tom Adams and I'm at my organic fruit tree nursery. We're based on the North Shropshire, North Wales border, not far from Oswestry. It's an organic fruit tree nursery. I've had this plot for 2 years and I'm about to set up an agroforestry system whereby we have an alley cropping system with rows of short rotation coppice, and we'll use the short rotation coppice to make wood chip and biochar out of. The idea being that we're self-sufficient in our own soil improvements. It'll also increase the biodiversity of the area and act as a windbreak and a source of craft material as well. There are only 2 other organic fruit tree nurseries in the country, and I think what distinguishes this from others is the fact that it is based on an agroforestry system. Agroforestry means agriculture and trees, essentially. And traditionally, we separate those two in British farming. You got trees, well, a few trees knocking around in the hedges or in woodlands, and then you have fields which are generally bare or bereft of any trees. But this is a case of mixing the two together. One particular way is silvo pasture, where you mix trees in fields and graze those fields, and that has lots of good benefits for stock and for the environment. And here we are looking at silvo arable, whereby we're mixing permanent trees in amongst our arable system, and our arable crops here are fruit trees, and also we'll be looking at growing some veg and some soft fruit as well. So the benefits of silvo arable are, by having a permanent set of trees, we've created a windbreak which will create a better microclimate for growing my trees in. It'll act as a wildlife corridor, so we'll be planting 10-metre wide strips of coppice. Some of them will be about 100 metres long, so this will be a great source of biodiversity. They'll be underplanted with spring bulbs. There'll be a lot of willow. That's an early source of pollen for bees. It'll help with taking up any excess moisture. With climate change happening, we're getting lots and lots of heavy rainfall, so by having trees there, it's going to soak up a lot of the water. And it's also going to be a supply of soil improvement. We'll be coppicing the trees on a short rotation, 2 to 3 years maximum, and from there we'll be harvesting ramial chipped wood, which is wood from trees less than 7 centimetres diameter that's full of nutrients. So once that's chipped, we'll be using it to mulch the nursery stock, mulch the orchard. We don't use any plastic here to grow our trees through. So you can see here we've got wood chip in between the rows. We've started sowing green manures, so that the idea is that we have no bare soil and no plastic. We're attracting more wildlife onto site through having the short rotation coppice. We will also be planting lots of wildflower strips which will attract predators and pollinators on site. We don't use any chemical sprays here, so I'm looking at trying to use nature as much as I can to design a system that makes nature want to come here, essentially, and do the work for me. Do my pest control, do my disease control. So for example, the willow, there's salicylic acid in the willow. We'll be chipping that and mulching the trees with that, so that's going to help with scab, for example. The plan is to dig 3 large ponds so that we can collect enough rainwater over the year to irrigate the trees, so we're not using drinking water. I'm designing in a 7-year rotation for my apple trees in order to help combat replant disease. So the idea is that we won't plant apple trees in the same place, in the same nursery bed for 7 years. And in that 7 years, we'll look at planting at least 2 or 3 years worth of green manures, potentially strawberries, potentially veg. A friend has recently talked about maybe growing cut flowers. So yeah, we're looking at adding as much diversity to the cropping as possible as well. So it won't just be fruit trees. There's between 80 and 100 different varieties of apple. At the moment, 4 or 5 different varieties of pear, about 10 plum, 4 or 5 quince, 1 medlar, and a couple of damson. But that's increasing every year as I get access to more collections. I had access to the National Perry collection this August, and I've started a collection of 30 different varieties of Perry pear. Okay, so this variety is Ashmead's kernel. You can see it's grown a good 1.5 meters in 1 year. Again, one of my favourite varieties, a russeted apple with a red blush to it. Good late keeper, tastes amazing. It's a hardy, disease-resistant variety. I always recommend this. I recommend this for every orchard pretty much, but when people ask me about hardy, disease-resistant varieties, Ashmead's kernel's always top of the list. This is one of my favourite varieties, Puckerup Pippin. It's from the English-Welsh borderlands, the area known as the Welsh Marches. It seems to be pretty disease-resistant. It's a small, russeted apple, full of flavour, and again good for growing in the hills of the Welsh Marches. So this variety is Discovery. It's quite a modern variety, but again it's always on my list as one of the best apples. It's got great disease resistance, it's a prolific cropper, and it's a good start to the apple season in August, September time. Like all early apples, it doesn't keep very well at all. A couple of 3 days in your fruit bowl and it starts to go a bit mushy, but straight off the tree, it's as good as it gets. Lovely, crisp and bright red. This is the most local variety to here, Sweeney Nonpareil. It was bred at a local estate called Sweeney Estate in 1807 by the head gardener there, Thomas Netherton Parker. It's a lovely acid green apple with a net of russeting around the fruit, and makes a good late keeping apple. It's a cooker, cooks to a sharp puree. This is a very popular Welsh variety called Bardsey Island. It was rediscovered a few years ago on Bardsey Island, growing on a wall of a monastery, I think, facing the sea. So good in salty conditions. Makes a nice yellowy red early apple. Next in the season after Discovery. Discovery makes a good start and Bardsey comes well afterwards. Well, the plans are to grow lots of fruit trees, but also to get community involvement. I mentioned earlier about the tree rotation that will be happening, so that's going to leave lots of space for other possibilities. So where I'm stood now, these trees are going to be dug out in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, which will leave the space available for other possibilities for the next 7 years. The green manures will form part of that plan, but also we're hoping that we can set up a community supported agriculture project. Somebody will come and grow veg, or the possibility of organic cut flowers. I've found somebody who's going to grow chamomile for tea on site. So we're looking at creating as much food produce and as much local produce as we can, in a sustainable, regenerative way that benefits the local community, the environment and the soil, and sequesters as much carbon as we possibly can.